The Pygmies, Part 4, from the Tanglewood Tales. I put it to you in full confidence of a response that shall be worthy of our national character and calculated to increase rather than diminish the glory which our ancestors have transmitted to us and which we ourselves have proudly vindicated in our warfare with the cranes. The orator was here interrupted by a burst of irrepressible enthusiasm. Every individual pygmy crying out that the national honor must be preserved at all hazards. He bowed, and making a gesture for silence, wound up his harangue in the following admirable manner. It only remains for us then to decide whether we shall carry on the war in our national capacity, one united people against a common enemy, or whether some champion, famous in former fights, shall be selected to defy the slayer of our brother Antæus to single combat. In the latter case, though not unconscious that there may be taller men among you, I hereby offer myself for that enviable duty. And believe me, dear countrymen, whether I live or die, the honor of this great country and the fame bequeathed us by our heroic progenitors shall suffer no diminution in my hands. Never, while I can wield this sword, of which I now fling away the scabbard, never, 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 even if the crimson hand that slew the great Antæus shall lay me prostrate like him on the soil which I give my life to defend. So saying this, the valiant pygmy drew out his weapon, which was terrible to behold, being as long as the blade of a penknife, and sent the scabbard whirling over the heads of the multitude. His speech was followed by an uproar of applause, as its patriotism and self-devotion unquestionably deserved, and the shouts and clapping of hands would have been greatly prolonged had they not been rendered quite inaudible by a deep respiration, vulgarly called a snore, from the sleeping Hercules. It was finally decided that the whole nation of pygmies should set to work to destroy Hercules, not be it understood from any doubt that a single champion would be capable of putting him to the sword, but because he was a public enemy, and all were desirous of sharing in the glory of his defeat. There was a debate whether the national honor did not demand that a herald should be sent with a trumpet to stand over the ear of Hercules, and after blowing a blast right into it, to defy him to combat by formal proclamation. But two or three venerable and sagacious pygmies, well versed in state affairs, gave it as their opinion that war already existed, and that it was their rightful privilege to take the enemy by surprise. Moreover, if awakened and allowed to get upon his feet, Hercules might happen to do them a mischief before he could be beaten down again. For as these sage counselors remarked, the stranger's club was really very big, and had rattled like a thunderbolt against the skull of Antæus. So the pygmies resolved to set aside all foolish punctilios and assail their antagonist at once. Accordingly, all the fighting men of the nation took their weapons and went boldly up to Hercules, who still lay fast asleep, little dreaming of the harm which the pygmies meant to do him. A body of 20,000 archers marched in front with their little bows all ready and the arrows on the strings. The same number were ordered to clamber upon Hercules, some with spades to dig his eyes out, and others with bundles of hay and all manner of rubbish with which they intended to plug up his mouth and nostrils, so that he might perish for lack of breath. These last, however, could by no means perform their appointed duty, inasmuch as the enemy's breath rushed out of his nose in an obstreperous hurricane and whirlwind, which blew the pygmies away as fast as they came nigh. It was found necessary, therefore, to hit upon some other method of carrying on the war. After holding a council, The captains ordered their troops to collect sticks, straws, dry weeds, and whatever combustible stuff they could find, and make a pile of it, heaping it high around the head of Hercules. As a great many thousand pygmies were employed in this task, they soon brought together several bushes of inflammatory matter, and raised so tall a heap that, mounting on its summit, they were quite upon a level with the sleeper's face. The archers, meanwhile, were stationed within bow shot, with orders to let fly at Hercules the instant he stirred. Everything being in readiness, a torch was applied to the pile, which immediately burst into flames, and soon waxed hot enough to roast the enemy, had he but chosen to lie still. A pygmy, you know, though so very small, might set the world on fire just as easily as a giant could, so that this was certainly the very best way of dealing with their foe, provided they could have kept him quiet while the conflagration was going forward. But no sooner did Hercules begin to be scorched than up he started with his hair in a red blaze. "What's all this?" he cried, bewildered with sleep, and staring about him as if he expected to see another giant. At that moment the 20,000 archers twanged their bowstrings, and the arrows came whizzing, like so many winged mosquitoes, right into the face of Hercules. But I doubt whether more than half a dozen of them punctured the skin, which was remarkably tough, as you know the skin of a hero has good need to be. "Villain!" shouted all the pygmies at once. "You have killed the giant Antaeus, our great brother, and the ally of our nation. We declare bloody war against you, and will slay you on the spot." Surprised at the shrill piping of so many little voices, Hercules, after putting out the conflagration of his hair, gazed all round about, but could see nothing. At last, however, looking narrowly on the ground, he espied the innumerable assemblage of pygmies at his feet. He stooped down, and taking up the nearest one between his thumb and forefinger, set him on the palm of his left hand, and held him at a proper distance for examination. It chanced to be the very identical pygmy who had spoken from the top of the toadstool, and had offered himself as a champion to meet Hercules in single combat. "What in the world, my little fellow," ejaculated Hercules, "may you be?" "I am your enemy," answered the valiant pygmy in his mightiest squeak. "You have slain the enormous Antaeus, our brother by the mother's side, and for ages the faithful ally of our illustrious nation. We are determined to put you to death, and for my own part, I challenge you to instant battle on equal ground." Hercules was so tickled with the pygmy's big words and warlike gestures that he burst into a great explosion of laughter, and almost dropped the poor little mite of a creature off the palm of his hand, through the ecstasy and convolution of his merriment. "Upon my word," cried he, "I thought I had seen wonders before today: hydras with 9 heads, stags with golden horns, 6-legged men, 3-headed dogs, giants with furnaces in their stomachs, and nobody knows what besides. But here, on the palm of my hand, stands a wonder that outdoes them all. Your body, my little friend, is about the size of an ordinary man's finger. Pray, how big may your soul be?" "As big as your own," said the pygmy. Hercules was touched with the little man's dauntless courage, and could not help acknowledging such a brotherhood with him as one hero feels for another. "My good little people," said he, making a low obeisance to the grand nation, "not for all the world would I do an intentional injury to such brave fellows as you. Your hearts seem to me so exceedingly great that, upon my honor, I marvel how your small bodies can contain them. I sue for peace, and, as a condition of it, will take 5 strides and be out of your kingdom at the 6th. Goodbye. I shall pick my steps carefully for fear of treading upon some 50 of you without knowing it. Ha ha ha! Ho ho ho! For once, Hercules acknowledges himself vanquished." Some writers say that Hercules gathered up the whole race of pygmies in his lion's skin and carried them home to Greece for the children of King Eurystheus to play with. But this is a mistake. He left them, one and all, within their own territory, where, for aught I can tell, their descendants are alive to the present day, building their little houses, cultivating their little fields, spanking their little children, waging their warfare with the cranes, doing their little business, whatever it may be, and reading their little histories of ancient times. In those histories, perhaps it stands recorded that a great many centuries ago, the valiant Pygmies avenged the death of the giant Antaeus by scaring away the mighty Hercules. Well, that's the end of the story of the Pygmies. And we'll pick up another story from the Tanglewood Tales before too many more weeks pass. In the meantime, thank you so much for listening. I hope you've clicked like and subscribe, and I hope you've left a comment on some of these videos. As our friend Tigger says, ta-ta for now. I love you guys. Bye-bye.